Ms. Stephanie Filler, and Ms. Lori Reed. So if you don't mind, if you go in the chat and let us know what agency and what state you're from. And I'm really just doing a mic check and video check to make sure you can hear and see us. We're in a different world these days, so I want to make sure that we are able to engage you okay. Okay. Thank you for your responses in the chat. Okay, I do see Miss Velasquez who's saying you still can't hear anything. I'm thinking it might be your audio or your speakers on whatever device you're using. The platform has a really great technical support, so I would advise you to go back to your agenda, that email, and see if you can get one of those tech support. And I'm not sure if they are already in this platform. I think we do have a couple of people that may be here to help us out. And also just a tip, make sure you're not muted or anything. We were just allowing a few more minutes to make sure people were able to come from their previous workshop and navigate through the virtual environment to make it to us. So, Hannah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, guys, well, we'll go ahead and get started. If anyone can't hear me, please put in the chat that you can't hear me before I get going any further. We are doing the workshop today on creating a mentoring environment for frontline supervisors. So hopefully that is the workshop that you all think that you're in, because here we are. We're going to talk about Georgia's supervisor mentoring program, the development of that program, some outcomes from that program, and then it's sort of intertwined within there just some strategies that can be used to create a mentoring environment in whatever learning environment you're currently working in. So this is not a presentation to teach you how to duplicate an existing program. It is a presentation to give you lots of ideas about how to enhance your current environments. And then we hope to be able to hear some feedback from you guys and get some ideas, maybe some experiences that you guys have had creating environments that promote learning, peer-to-peer learning, up and down learning, all sorts of directions. So we're going to do some housekeeping stuff first. We're a pretty easy group. We hope this is going to be as engaging and as personable as it would be if we were all in a conference room together. So in terms of housekeeping, as usual, just make sure that you're on mute. If you'd like to come off mute, ask a question, give some feedback, please feel free to do so. And then in terms of cameras, you're welcome to have your camera on, camera off. We're leaving that up to you guys. We're not in a staff meeting. No one's taking notes on who's on their camera. There is a hand raise button in the top right of your screen if you would like to raise your hand at any point. We also are going to utilize the chat feature. So although there are 3 of us and you would expect us to be able to see the hand if it's raised, if you raise your hand and we don't, please just throw into the chat that your hand is up, that you have a question, in case we miss that. And just bear with us in case we experience any unforeseen technology issues. Hopefully we will not. So does anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay, so there are 3 of us presenting today. My name is Hannah Rule. I'm the unit manager for a group of mentors in Georgia. Angela Walker is going to be presenting, as well as Kimberly Mobley. We work for the state of Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services. DFACS is the nickname that we use. So you may hear the phrase DFACS throughout this presentation, but we're the Public Child Welfare Agency for Georgia. We work specifically in the training and professional development section. So we each run a team of mentors. Also in our section are all our various teams of trainers, teams of writers, teams of practice model coaches, and some other special projects. So we are in that group. We work out of the state office and serve the entire state. So I'm going to go ahead and go over the agenda real quick for this presentation. And again, please don't let the view of a PowerPoint suppress anyone's desire to interact. We just felt like virtually that the PowerPoint was the best way to get everyone the information. Angela's going to cover this first part. She's going to do an intro about our program, some vision and mission info, talk about the mentoring structure and the model that's used. We're going to cover virtual adaptation for the mentor program, because I'm sure, like everybody on the phone who had all of your things running along smoothly, and then when the spring hit, everything kind of got turned on its side. So we'll talk about some adapting that we've done, and then talk about some measurements of success, ongoing evaluation, and then we will hear from a mentee and go over how we use testimonials within the program. So that is the agenda. And we will go ahead and get started with Angela giving us some background information on the program itself.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and welcome again, guys. Good afternoon. I don't know about you, but this was different to do a national conference in a virtual environment, but I have to give a shout out to APHSA and NSDTA folks. They've done a really great job of making this very seamless, so I'm hoping your experience has been the same. Let's start out with a quick introductory video on our program that will give you an idea of how we designed it. And as the video plays, if you will, just making sure that you can always have the best experience possible. If you can't hear it, can't see it, please get in the chat or raise your hand and my colleague will be able to help you with that, or at least let me know that somebody's not able to hear it.
Okay, so my day starting with a bang is an understatement. Our 15-year-old foster child Manuel has run away, and he was making such good progress and actually visited with an adopted family a few weeks ago. Just hoping he reaches out to my worker. She has such a good rapport with him. Wait, isn't there some policy about runaways? I can't even think straight, because before I can handle this, I get a call from a foster parent that she has not received her per diem this month. Then there's the dreaded thing I actually had to do on my to-do list today, a performance counseling session with one of my workers who has consistently not met her family every month, even after we discussed. Okay, so my day starting with a bang is an understatement. Our 15-year-old foster child Manuel has run away, and he was making such good progress and actually visited with an adopted family a few weeks ago. Just hoping he reaches out to my worker. She has such a good rapport with him. Wait, isn't there some policy about runaways? I can't even think straight, because before I can handle this, I get a call from a foster parent that she has not received her per diem this month. Then there's the dreaded thing I actually had to do on my to-do list today, a performance counseling session with one of my workers who has consistently not met her families every month, even after we discussed this and developed a plan of action that would help her. I really wonder sometimes if this job is even realistic.
The scenario depicted in that video is actually a typical day for our child welfare supervisors. We believe that mentoring support can help them manage those day-to-day challenges, so we developed a formalized mentoring program that would provide mentoring support to them as they carry out their day-to-day operations. Let's take a look at how we designed that. Before we discuss the mentor program design, let's take a look at how Georgia's child welfare system is managed. It is actually managed locally by 100. I'm going to try to take us to the part of the video. It's starting over for some reason. Let's see. Here we go. Supervisors. The Metro team consists of a manager and 6 supervisors, mentors.
Can somebody give me some feedback? Are you able to hear it?
And the South team, which is the largest in terms of the number of counties served, it consists of a manager and 8 mentors servicing approximately 161 supervisors. We will now take an in-depth look at the mentor model and process. Okay, so I'm hoping you were able to get most of the video. Can you give me some feedback? Did it end appropriately? Okay, good. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with the rest of our presentation. We are with the Training and Professional Development Unit, and we want to just give you an idea of how Georgia's system is designed so you will see how we structured the mentor program. So how did we even get started with the mentor program? So I have to take you back into a little bit of a historical context. Our former governor, Nathan Deal, he convened a Child Welfare Reform Council. And his charge for this council was to develop, well, first of all, review child welfare system in Georgia, figure out what the challenges were, give a report to him on some recommendations that would make it better. From that council came the recommendation for the Supervisor Mentor Program. So our mission and vision around the program, once we got to go ahead to start it, was to make sure we had excellent supervisory staff who could enhance Georgia's robust workforce in child protection. So our specific mission around it was to develop quality child welfare supervisors who not only meet outcomes and promote safety and solution-based services to our customers, our children and families, but we also want to make sure that we retain the best child welfare practitioners in that process. So that was how we got started. We've been in commission since 2018, so that's a little over 2.5 years. And just to give you an idea of how we structured the program, we wanted to start out with the right people. What we realized is that you had to have the right people who could go out into the 159 counties. As you've seen, Georgia's pretty spread it out. They could go into each of those cultural dynamics and be able to disseminate knowledge and influence practice. So our selection process for our mentors was very rigorous. So just to give you an idea of who they are, we have 20 mentors statewide. We have combined of 178 years of child welfare supervision experience only. So that's averaging maybe 10 plus years per mentor. That was important for us. The next step we took was we gathered some data around our supervisors. Who were they? What were their challenges? And what we found is that our workforce is very young in terms of the amount of experience, that number of years experience they have in child protection altogether. So our program was going to prioritize new supervisors. But we also wanted to make sure that we didn't miss those supervisors who were in the mid-range of their careers and even our veterans, our master level supervisors, because child welfare is always evolving. So we want to make sure that we continue to help them evolve in their careers. So although our priority is new supervisors, we also accept requests from counties for veteran supervisors. So it's designed for all. So that's kind of how it's structured. I'm going to get into now some of the specific things that we do. So I'll pause here for questions about who our mentors are and kind of how we got started. You can unmute yourself or come in the chat. Okay, so for our pre-assessment part of it, before we get to that part, we actually introduce ourselves in cyberspace with the mentors, the mentees, and we do what we call an introductory letter. And so what we do is, I think somebody's moving everybody okay? Okay, my PowerPoint should stay here. Okay, so we do an introductory letter to the supervisors so that they know who we are. As you can see, Georgia's pretty spread it out. We have 3 different districts. So we reach out to them to say, hey, this is not something that is punitive. We're going to be your mentor. And we set up what we call a pre-assessment process. We send them what we call an individualized mentoring plan. That way a supervisor can say, hey, what do I think are my strengths since I've been in this role? What are my challenges? We also want to hear from their direct supervisors. In Georgia, that can be a social services administrator, that middle management. In some counties, like in our smaller counties, it can even be upper management. It can be a county director. We want to hear from them about how they feel their supervisors' capacities are in terms of their strength and their challenges. So we get those 2 pre-assessment to start our blueprint for how we're going to coach and mentor this supervisor. Then we have what we call an entrance conference. We sit down at the table. Now we do it virtually. My colleague will explain how this process has been adapted virtually. We sit down with them and we go over how we're going to do the process. We talk about the fact that the mentor-mentee relationship is confidential. We also discuss how some situations may warrant me going to your immediate supervisor. And we call that our red flag communication process. And what that specifically means is if I am working with a supervisor mentee and I feel there's a need for me to go to their boss and maybe break some of that confidentiality, it's only for 3 main reasons. If it's a safety concern for a case, if there's an issue around integrity, we don't see it a lot, but it can happen, or an issue around engagement where a supervisor may be engaging their staff in an inappropriate way. So those are the 3 ways where we would have to kind of break that confidentiality with our mentee-mentor relationship. And so we explain all of that at the entrance conference. I think I've got some activity in the chat. Just want to make sure. Okay, great. Make sure you stop me at any point if there were questions.
Do you want to go ahead, Angela, and hit on some of the questions from the chat?
Sure.
We had a question around, are the mentors compensated or do they have any other duties? And I just put in the chat that these folks mentor full time. So their primary job, their caseload, so to speak, is comprised of supervisors from around the state. So they aren't doing this in addition to another primary job duty. There was a question about how the supervisors are selected. And if the question is the supervisors who get mentored, they're selected by referrals from their counties. We also cross-reference with the registrar to make sure that we get all the new supervisors who are coming in and registering for training. Let's see. Angela, I'm going to let you hit a couple of other of these. How many managers does each mentor? Okay. So
that might help when I get to the process. I'm going to talk about the shoulder to shoulder and we do the one-on-one. I think it'll answer a couple of questions. But thank you, Hannah. I should have mentioned that the Georgia Reform Council that was convened by the governor actually gave us specific funding for the program. So yes, our mentors, this is their primary responsibility to go out and mentor their supervisors on a rotation basis designed by each manager for each of the districts. And you're looking at the 3 of them because our cultures are different for each of the districts. So we prioritize new supervisors, but we also take requests for veteran and other supervisors. But once we finish I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Once we finish the entrance conference where we set up the discussion with the mentee who's going to be mentored, we provide 2 to 3 full weeks of one-on-one daily mentoring sessions. And this is shoulder to shoulder. This is not, hey, I need to clear my calendar today because my mentor is going to be working with me. Once again, Ms. Mobley is going to tell you about how we had to adapt our mentoring to the virtual world. But in a real world, we would be shoulder to shoulder. You see the video where the supervisor, the permanency supervisor, has a regular day of challenges. A mentor will be there to help her navigate through those challenges, rely on some resources, create some practices so that the next time that it comes up. Those sessions are, once again, they're very structured. We go by what's in the individualized mentoring plan. The supervisor says, hey, these are things I know I need. We also go by what their boss said that they need. And then I'm going to explain to you in just a second that we believe that sometimes people don't know what they don't know. So we have an actual model where we want to make sure that we touch on all of those components with all of the supervisors we mentor, but we go more in depth with the challenges that they've identified for themselves, or maybe their direct supervisor has identified for them. So that's the way it's structured, 2 to 3 full weeks of shoulder to shoulder support. Once we finish that, then we get to an exit conference where we sit down with them and their boss again and say, hey, we've completed our session. This is what it looks like. Here's the catch. This is what the ongoing professional development that we need for this supervisor based on what we've seen, because our mentoring sessions are more like coaching sessions. We are live with you in your day. And so when we see you engage with a community partner or we see you engage with your team, we give you immediate feedback. At this exit conference, we leave them with a comprehensive written report by the mentor, talking about the things that we worked on and the things that they still need for ongoing professional development. I'm going to pause here for questions in the chat.
We had a couple questions that have been answered in the chat. We had a question about how long mentoring lasts. And I think somebody will hit upon that at some point, but the real answer to that question is it just depends on the supervisor. We have some supervisors who we mentor for a couple weeks, shoulder to shoulder, and then they're good to go and we do our follow-ups, and we have some that we're in there 2, 3, 4 times a week for a couple months. Then we had another question around, do the supervisors, mentors do any direct practice? And the generic answer is no, they don't. The behind the scenes answer is sometimes we do help out with direct service when there is, like a massive turnover in a county or some other situation where it's all hands on deck. And so teams have experienced doing investigations, supervising case managers, doing different things like that when needed.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that we wanted to protect the process and protect the program was we put it under the training and professional development unit so we could specifically have these staff, this is their primary job function. For those of you on this platform, I'm sure you know that in child protection, sometimes you have to have all hands on deck. But eventually you do that so much until the role becomes a little clouded. We did not want that for the mentor program. So within our districts, we get requests for different things for us to help out, and we certainly are of service to our counties and our constituents, but we want to make sure we protect the program interest. So I think once I finish this up, you'll get a good idea of when we wrap up and what type of components we work on. So we've done our exit conference. We provided them with a comprehensive support report that says, hey, these are the things we worked on. These are the things that this supervisor continue to need. We have a post-assessment at this time. We asked the supervisors, direct supervisor, hey, in these particular areas, do you see a change? Now, it's only been 2 to 3 weeks. We don't expect a whole lot, but we expect some things to be an immediate change. And then we go to their staff, the mentee staff. We get 2 case managers and we ask them, hey, what do you think? Give them a couple of questions about what they feel about their supervision that they're receiving from their boss. Is it quality? Is it knowledgeable? Is it supportive? And here's the biggest part of our program that we are very, very proud that we're able to do with the program, and that's the follow-up. If you notice that we do 2 to 3 full weeks of one-on-one shoulder-to-shoulder support, now I've got to give you a chance as a mentee to go out and practice those things. But I also know that once my coach leaves, I may settle back in just out of force of habit to my ways, right? So we come back in 3 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 and 24 months after we finish that exit conference. The research has shown us, you can go to any Child Welfare Information Gateway article, and it'll tell you that 0 to 2 years for a child welfare supervisor, they're just emerging in their roles. So we believe if we stay with them for those first 24 months, they have a better chance for success and go on to be a mastery level in terms of a child welfare supervisor or even be promoted. So our follow-up sessions are crucial. They are usually set to maybe 1 to 2 days of shoulder to shoulder. Now we're going over those things that you were supposed to continue to practice and be developed. And that concludes our process in terms of the program. It's really just a general way of how we organize the structure of it. I wanted to talk with you about those components and what we built around the capacity that we wanted our supervisors to have. Any questions before I move forward? I think there's a question in the chat. Did I get that one? Are you able to further receive? I just see the last part of it.
Oh, sorry, I was typing an answer to that one.
Okay, good.
The training piece, we had a couple of folks asked, did the mentors get any specific or formal training? We did have a training that was developed for our team by the University of Georgia that focused specifically on mentoring in social services. And so our team went through that training, and we've had our folks participate really on an ongoing basis in some of the advanced leadership training that's offered through our agency, and then as well as through DHS, which is kind of our bigger umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also participate in the ongoing regional and statewide practice and policy training so that their own practice skills aren't behind the times, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think somebody had a question about follow-up. I hope I was able to answer that. Our follow-up sessions can be from 1 to 2. I've seen some follow-up sessions be 2 to 3 days. It just depends on what that mentee has going on and what those follow-up components are. A follow-up session is not just a, hey, how are things going? It can be that, but it's specifically around those development things that we've already identified for that mentee. So we're following up on it. Let me give you an example. Some of our mentees struggle with asking for help from their immediate supervisor, who mostly is an administrator. So we may have a practical thing for them to do, like, hey, instead of sending an email next time, how about we call? Or maybe we get on a video chat. Maybe you follow up with your boss about your next one-on-one conference. So when I check back in with you, I'm going to make sure that you've done some of those practices. Okay. So at this point, before we get into our components, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to kind of implement a quick poll, and I hope this works, but that's okay because we've got our chat, and I really appreciate you guys being very interactive in the chat. I'm going to develop a poll now, and I want you to just tell me in a short format, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing frontline child welfare supervisors in this era of child protection? So if I could get some feedback from the participants, just a few of you, to let me know if the chat is visible and if you are able to actually enter a response. Good, thank you. Okay, we got a few more responses. It tells me exactly how many I have left, so let's give it a few more minutes. I think Ms. Cox she's probably responding to Hannah, but yeah, I think I just saw the tail end of it. It's the hardest job in the agency. I totally agree if you're talking about supervisor. It really is. In every aspect of our policy in Georgia, there's a supervisory component where they have to follow up with the case manager. Talk with your supervisor. Oh, you need to implement a safety plan with that family? Call your supervisor first. So that's what we realized in Georgia. So we are just glad that we were able to offer this program. I think there's a question in the chat. Hannah could probably answer that one. Can we? Okay. Thank you, Hannah. Few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and see what we have. So I'm going to end the quiz now. And don't worry if you didn't get a chance to get it. You can go in the chat and let us know what your thoughts were. So what it should do is give us some ideas about what your thoughts were. Okay, can I see the results? Did anybody see any of those results? Yeah, it's not for some reason, but that's okay. I think what we wanted to get from the poll was some of your ideas about what you think was some of those challenges. So I hate to ask this, but if a couple of you would go in the chat and just kind of tell me what your thoughts were. That was the only thing we weren't able to practice with was the polling. Okay, so let's see if that's gonna work. Managing up, awesome. Not enough staff turnover, so high levels of stress and proper guidance. So you are right on point with what we wanted to accomplish in Georgia. So we did some research, and of course, this is Alfred Kadushin's supervisory function model is probably not new to many of you on the call. So we started with that, which is those three-legged overarching functions of a supervisor, which is administrative, educative, and supportive. And he used the analogy of the three-legged stool. If one of those functions are maybe weak or leaning, or maybe it's broken altogether, it's not going to be a good foundation to hold that up. So he believed that you have to have all three of these functions as a child welfare supervisor. So we used this model to develop what we call the mentor skill building components. We took Kadushin's model and we made it into practical thing that our supervisor, that we could actually work with them on. And just for us to remember it and to be able to add a unique type of flavor to our model, we called it the mentor components. And they are managing, engaging, navigating resources, technology, organizational leading, and relationships. So now you're probably thinking, well, what is under all of these components? I got you covered. I'm going to go through them very briefly. Please get in the chat or come off on mute if you have any questions about them. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly just to give you an idea. And I want to remind you, our supervisors do an individualized mentoring plan, and then their bosses tell us, hey, these are some things I think Hannah needs. We put that in what I like to call our mentor model factory, because any function for a child welfare supervisor will fit into this. For example, under technology, if you have a supervisor that's struggling with the virtual platforms and how to manage their team virtually, that fits perfectly in our technology part of it. So let's go through it really quickly. Under managing, we are looking at things and working with doing practical things with our supervisors around time management, staff development, performance management, leading for results. How do you manage data? And this is not all inclusive. Under engaging, we're looking at, do they use critical thinking when they partner with their case managers to make those crucial decisions on our families? Are they being supportive of their teams? Are they utilizing those meetings like unit meetings and individual conferences to engage their teams appropriately? Are they coaching their teams on those best practice and policy implementation? Under navigating resources, we want to make sure that the supervisors, that you know what resources are available to you. We're in the hustle and bustle of the work, and we all know what frontline supervision looks like. You may not know everything that's available to you, so we make sure that they understand it. For example, for a supervisor who manages CPS, investigations and family support, that first response, there's a lot of resources available to those supervisors at the state office level and the regional level. So we make sure they identify those. The other thing under navigating resources that we focus on is the supervisor realizing that their direct supervisor is a resource to them. So how do you navigate that resource and build that relationship with your boss? So that's under navigating resources. Under technology, we go through all of our regular platforms that we use in child protection in Georgia. For example, our SHINE system. This is where we document all of our child protection, our reports. This is our system. We want to make sure that the supervisors are aware of their functions in the SHINE system. We have a electronic system to manage performance in Georgia. They need to be familiar with those. I may not want to tell Ms. Mobley that, yeah, you hired me as a supervisor, but I have no clue on how to access this training site and how to register my case managers for training. We work with them on those. And of course, Kim is going to tell us about how we've had to adapt to a lot of technological changes with mentoring and making sure our supervisors are supported in this area. Under organizational leading is just what it says. Do supervisors see themselves as a leader in the organization? Sometimes, guys, they really, and it's probably because of the nature of the work, they become just managers. They only focus on that managing part. I need your timesheets. I need your data to be correct. We want them to see themselves as a leader so that they can message the mission and vision that we have for the agency as a whole. The big part of this section is, if Hannah is my county director and she's implementing a new practice, I may not agree with that, but it's mandated. Hannah has mandated this. So how do I message that as a supervisor to my team the appropriate way? How do I message the why behind the work? That's organizational leading. We actually do practical things with our supervisors around this. And finally, guys, relationships is the R. Under relationships, we help our supervisors manage conflict resolutions, having those difficult conversations with their team or even their boss. Engaging and building relationships with our external partners. That's a big one. We have a lot of contract services. We have a lot of community stakeholders. Our supervisors are sometimes the very first face that these partners engage. We want to make sure they can build those relationships. How do they use their communication, emails and face-to-face, now video conferencing? How do you use that to foster a good relationship with your team and your external partners? Again, that list is not all inclusive, but that wraps up the major components of our capacity model for our mentor program. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kim Mobley. Ms. Mobley is actually the manager for the mentors who serve that South District. If you remember our little map, that green area all at the bottom, that is Ms. Mobley's coverage area. A lot of area to cover.
Thanks, Angela, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk to you about how we adapted to virtual mentoring. Virtual mentoring really kicked off in the state of Georgia late April. Our teams are used to traveling across the districts, staying in hotels for a week, 2 weeks at a time, depending on how the supervisor is being mentored. And we typically offer either 2 weeks back to back or week on, week off. So they have that option. And so most times our staff are, on the road traveling. So before we began virtual mentoring, we had to make sure that our mentors were proficient in the technology that they were going to be using with the supervisors. And we didn't have a lot of time to really get them caught up to speed. So what we did was a lot of what we call in-house training, making sure that they were able to focus on the different features of the platforms that we were going to use. And we did a lot of teach backs on how to navigate in Teams, how to walk a supervisor through screen sharing feature. Because what we wanted them to be able to do is do the same work with their staff that we were teaching them through mentoring. And we also wanted to make sure that our mentors had a good grasp of like Microsoft Office, how to use OneNote so you can track deadlines and different projects that are due. We really want to make it support the work that they are doing day to day that was converted to virtual supervision. And once we had gotten to a comfort level as far as the mentors about how virtual work could be done, and we made sure that we created some excitement around the possibilities of mentoring virtually. Because we didn't want it to be seen as something that you check off a list, but how could you be creative and really make it particular for that supervisor so their experience would be just as good virtual as if you were face to face. So the first thing we did was to identify expectations. We were clear that the mentors needed expectations that they could then pass on to the supervisors that they were going to work with. And our expectations really focused around being committed to the process, understanding that professional attire at all times is expected when we are mentoring on whichever platform we're using, understanding that there had to be engagement. And with the staff not being in the office, we found that there's been more engagement, more focus time on the mentoring process than when they were in the office. And, we were there more hours, but we're finding more content and depth with the mentoring being done virtually. We had to have a lot of conversation around flexibility in terms of how long would we mentor? What days would we mentor? Will we do it every day? Will we do it a part of the day? So what we did was made that part of the individualized mentoring plan. It depends on the supervisor, because we recognize also that as our staff were home teleworking, they also had some school-aged children, and we had to factor in their home and work-life balance. So what we found is a lot of times our mentoring has gone beyond the 2 to 3 weeks into the 4 or 5 weeks, and some a little bit more, but that's okay because that's what that individual needs. And the mentoring with our mentors being home-based as well and not having to travel across all 159 counties, they have more time for some of that prep work that they would not have had before. So it's really made a difference in terms of being able to focus on that individual mentee. And another part that went into us being successful with mentoring virtually was our use of MS Teams. As I said before, we did a lot of pre-work, making sure that the mentors were proficient in its use, and also added in a couple of other platforms for them to use. But what we really want them to do was share what they had learned with the mentors, because at the end of the day, when that mentoring session stops, that supervisor still has a responsibility to a team, and we want the virtual supervision piece to be as seamless as it can possibly be, being supported by a mentor. So that was our focus. And we found that using different platforms and having flexibility, it really allowed us to focus on more engaging. We were able to do research more resources for that particular supervisor. And we also focus on skill building and team building at the same time virtually. And so a lot of times we will model, say, a team building activity that the supervisor can in turn take back to her team when she's having her unit meeting or staffing or conference, and it becomes they mimic what they were taught, and then they're adding and creating different means of ensuring that cohesion between the team maintains, even though it's all being done virtually. Another thing that we've done, like I said, in terms of using the platform that we have available to us. A lot of our mentoring, like we said before, it was built on being face-to-face, in-person, connected. And we talked to supervisors about everything from how do you establish your productivity files. And normally those are, actual file cabinets with the lock and key that we create in the office for each individual staff member. We can't do that virtually. So we help them navigate how to create virtual productivity files. And that's a way for them to have a file for each staff member, is protected and they can add to it. And so that way we're encouraging them not only to focus on what the negative in terms of that case manager may be doing, but also drop a note in there, something positive they've done, and then share that note with that staff member, because all that goes into adding and fostering that team cohesion and adding to the team building that we are encouraged as part of mentoring. Another thing that we focused on, especially after we went virtual, every district has supervisors that we've worked with who need a little bit more support around the educative supervision piece of supervision. And all that is, and we focus on supervisors understanding that as a supervisor, you're also a teacher. And what we did, we convened a supervisor workshop, and basically had people talking to them about how do you prepare an agenda for a meeting? How do you make sure that your content is something that's going to capture your audience's attention? And we worked with them through a series of 3 workshops, really focused on them being teachers with their basically their unit as the audience. And some of them went outside of their units, which was absolutely, marvelous. But the real intent was them to be able to put on that hat of teacher with their staff, because the focus is on the supervisor ever learning and in turn teaching her staff. Our mentor team right now is working with the instructional design team. And what we're doing is creating a virtual supervisor academy for our newly hired supervisors. And we're doing this because we recognize that the in-person supervisor academy, they can't attend. But we also know that they need some supports around setting that firm foundation on the right path for new supervisors. So we're implementing that, and that's going to roll out in pilot a little bit later this month, as a matter of fact. Overall, virtual mentoring has really been positive for the state of Georgia. And I say that because our focus has always been on the frontline supervisors and making sure that they are able to advocate for their team, and transfer information that we give them to their team. So we've got the front line being covered and supported in a way that it was not before mentoring, and it's even more so now that we're doing virtual, because mentors are able to sit in on those, like I said, the staffings, the conferences, the unit meetings. We also attend court virtually, and we also work with the supervisors, especially on case progression, those cases that get stuck. And it's just like, this child's been in foster care for 5 years. What's the next step? And we can walk with them through that process as far as the entire county getting on board and understanding what the next steps are. And so we convene those kind of meetings, helping the supervisor understand you're not by yourself, you have support. And so that, as long as we're doing that, we're making sure that the resources are in place for those supervisors that we touch. And hopefully our request is that they share that abroad. And in our work, we found that as long as we provide the support, the resources, our mentoring has been a success, either virtually or face-to-face. We reached out to some of our team members and asked them to share with us how they adapted to virtual mentoring. And I'm going to read a couple of them to you. And basically what I did was chose one from each of the districts. Kimberly Crankfield of the Metro said, virtual mentoring has been more collaborative than before between herself and her mentees. There's been more engagement, and it allows her to be more accessible. And it is also proven to be more flexible for her and the mentee. Lindsay Brave with the North team said, mentoring virtually allows her more one-on-one sessions with the mentee without interruptions or distractions. And we all know what it's like being in a county office. The sessions are more engaged and more meaningful to the mentee because they're all about her and she's able to focus on herself and her needs or his. And she also said that moving to virtual has allowed them to have more group sessions with more mentees present. Brenda Lewis of the South said initially she was hesitant about mentoring in a system that she did not know how to navigate. She was able to adapt to virtual mentoring with the help of her team and some helpful tools. She has found virtual mentoring to be flexible and gives her instant contact with her mentees. She is no longer fearful of the process and is ready to move forward. Did you notice any common themes in what I shared? I picked up on two ideas. The first one is being prepared, and the second is having a positive attitude. That makes the most impact on mentoring, virtual or face-to-face. The beauty of virtual mentoring is that it allows our teams to continue to provide the support, resources, and skill building that has been identified as a need in the state of Georgia for supervisors. Next, you will hear from Hannah as she talks a little bit more about upcoming activities and projects for supervisor mentors in Georgia.
And this is the expression of the year, Hannah. You're on mute.
Y'all, this is the kind of safe space that our mentors create so that when things like that happen, we just move right on. We have about 5 minutes to wrap this presentation up to get you guys to your break before your next series starts. So we're going to move pretty quickly through this. Upcoming projects. We have done a lot of work in our everyday mentoring with the folks referred to as middle management. So in Georgia, in most of the counties, there's an administrator who supervises the supervisors. And in a lot of situations, that administrator is someone who was a supervisor themselves for 2 years and 1 day. And when they hit that 2-year mark, a lot of times they move right into administration. So we've done a lot of kind of mentoring the administrators alongside the supervisors in many situations. We held a summit statewide where we brought all of them together to talk about what we had learned from mentoring the supervisors in terms of what their biggest needs were, and just to do a lot of large group brainstorming with the administrators about how to best support the supervisors. And it really helped solidify that partnership between our group and the administrators, because you can imagine how kind of difficult and sometimes awkward it is to go in and mentor someone who's also being supervised by someone when as a mentor you used to supervise someone, and it can get a little dicey. So creating that partnership with the administrators and then in the smaller counties with the county directors has been really vital. We're working right now on a supervisor simulation training. So similar to what our case managers get in case manager training, our supervisors will be participating in simulation where they'll get to practice technical skills like staffing cases, brainstorming around permanency. They'll get to practice soft skills, communicating with case managers who don't want to be communicated with, or communicating with your own manager who has no time for you. We've got some modules around difficult conversations, performance management, all those things that we all know that really only get better with practice. So having a training that the supervisors can practice those in a great safe space is something we're excited about. Moving through, measuring success in 30 seconds or less. All right, measuring success. Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier about retention. Of course, that's something that we were super focused on. We have mentored 318 supervisors since we started. 81% of those folks are still supervising. So that's pretty exciting. Knowing, of course, we're not the only factor playing into them being retained, but we would like to think that the mentoring they've received has really played into that, especially the follow-up sessions. So those folks that seem good to go at the beginning and then 6 months in, they're ready to crack. We are in there doing that follow-up, giving them the tools they need to hold on a little bit longer. And then in terms of supervisor promotion, we also do a lot of work with supervisors, especially those kind of mid-level, I've been supervising a year or two, what am I doing with my life people. We help those folks create a new career path if that's something they want to do is grow. We've had 26 supervisors become promoted that we've mentored. So promoted to an admin position, promoted to a state office consultant position. We've had folks go to regional adoption positions. So really making sure that we give everyone some professional development opportunities that we work with. And this is the RBA goal. So in addition to a lot of talking, we also do a lot of measuring. Here's the slide about measuring. And the testimonials. We have done a lot of videos of supervisors who've been mentored and have them talk about their experience. It helps in terms of a marketing tool for leadership, for us to say, this is what other supervisors have experienced. Don't you want your county's supervisors to experience this? And we also show it to new supervisors so that they can see that supervisor mentoring is not scary. It's not a disciplinary action. It's really just like creating a relationship with someone who has been right where you are, who has struggled through it, who can give you some pointers on how to survive. So that we've used a lot of those testimonials. And
Anna, I'm sorry, in the chat, we have a question or a request to go back to some data.
okay.
Really quickly. Is this the slide here, Mandy? Or this one? I think the results-based accountability.
So this slide talks about, we really tried to pick something that all supervisors, regardless of program area, county structure, unit structure, would be responsible for doing, and then wanting to take a stab at having as big of an impact on that activity as we could. And case staffings is what really just goes across the board on the supervisory level. So we've taken a look at what our mentors are doing to impact the supervisor's ability to staff, the supervisor's ability to coach their own worker around staffing, and then sort of the unspoken part of teaching the supervisors that you got to do the staffings. They got to get done, first of all. So sort of the quality and the quantity aspect of case staffings is what we've looked at. And Angela, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a quick wrap up and any other questions.
Okay, and so you guys have until 2:45, I think, to get to your next workshop. So we just wanted to pause right here to see if you had any questions. Let's see, the PowerPoint is below, also at the bottom. Thank you for sharing that. We do have the PowerPoint that's at the bottom. And I'm going to reach out to the facilitators, the coordinators, to see if we can share our contact information with you guys to answer any of those questions that we didn't get through. We want to thank you so much for your engaging. We didn't have too many tech glitches. Thank you guys for coming right in and giving me the feedback on the poll. And we hope that you were able to take, even if some ideas, even if your agency doesn't have a formalized mentoring role or process, that you could take some ideas from ours in terms of providing that support to our frontline staff. That's where the rubber meets the road in child protection. We were excited to for you guys to join us today and have a great rest of your workshop.
Goodbye, everybody.
So it's going to start recording in 30 seconds. I thought it was going to kick us out. That's good.